Redline Logbook here for D. Gray Man's Phantom Thief G arc, and we start off with Phantom G, this weird-looking guy in a costume currently in the middle of a robbery. After smashing through a window, he's then immediately caught by the police with a net, and as he's being dragged away to prison, he declares that they will never catch him. We then have a time skip where the head detective of a police station is currently arguing with his daughter because he's not spending enough time with her because he's too busy dealing with the Phantom Thief G case. And she threatens if he doesn't stop being a workaholic, she's going to find herself a man and leave. She then immediately storms off and then bumps into Kanda. She finds Kanda to be very handsome and is about to flirt with him when her father immediately runs up, pushes her out of the way, literally just shoves her in the face, and demands to know who Kanda is. Kanda doesn't seem to give two craps. All he cares about is if this is Inspector Gallimore, because he's the man they're looking for. When I say them, I mean him, Mary, Alan, and of course Link, because he has to follow around Alan. Detective Gallimore recognizes the Black Order cross and basically just tells his daughter to get out so he can speak with these men. While she's on her way out walking through the streets, she is then assaulted by a child she knows. After smacking the kid in the head, we then learn that her name is Amelia because the perverted child has two friends with him, and they tell Amelia that the director is about to have her birthday party. And so they all leave. And the next thing we see is the inspector showing off his jail cells, which are filled with people dressed like Phantom Thief G. Like a lot. Like an absurd amount. And the reason why Alan and the rest are there is because they're currently looking for a few of their finders, who they suspect have been arrested as the Phantom Thieves. First off, the fact that they didn't change their costumes while throwing them in the jail cell after all this time is absurd. But second, obviously all these men are innocent. Something is being done to them to make them do this, because it all immediately just jump at the inspector begging to be released, saying they don't remember anything that happened. They have nothing to do with this. Phantom G is a ghost that can possess people. And of course the inspector looks at all of them like they're idiots because he doesn't believe in ghosts. That's when we get to see the finders. They all recognize the exorcist, run up to the front of the jails, and start begging to be let go, and are grateful that they're there to be rescued. And Kanda's response is basically to threaten them because they fucked up. So yeah, basically since Arc 2, Kanda has not changed. He still treats finders like shit. Anyway, after the finders stop crying, basically, they're able to give the report saying that their investigation into the incidents led them to the Phantom G individual, and what happened to them and all of these men is most likely connected to said Phantom G and the innocents. And then Alan asks, okay, well, how do you know for sure? Like, we need to make sure that you actually are in the right area. And apparently they continue to do their research in the prison by talking to the other inmates, especially a Miss Bonnie, which is some transvestite thug who took over the prison, and he basically has been there for 6 months, which is really fucked up to be locked away for a crime you didn't commit for 6 months. And he basically was able to explain how every single crime committed is exactly the same. 1, Phantom G wears the exact same weird outfit. 2, he always announces what he's going to steal first before he actually steals it. And 3rd, he has no body. He just switches from person to person. The inspector, of course, completely just shuts this down, saying it's stupid, ridiculous. There are no such thing as ghosts, and there's no such thing as any of this body-snatching crap. You're all just a bunch of criminals. Mary then confirms that based on their heartbeats, none of them are lying, so at least they believe what they're saying. And Kanda's like, you know what, I don't really care. Once we take down this Phantom G guy and take away the innocents, we'll just leave. It's not our problem anymore about what he stole or whatever. The inspector gets mad at the idea that someone would be butting into his case. That's when another police officer runs in holding a letter in the shape of a G saying that the Phantom Thief has declared his next target. So we then jump to the night of the robbery, where the police and all the exorcists are currently waiting to catch Phantom Thief G. In the meantime, Alan and Link are listening to a recording, the last recording, that Cross made on Team Campy. It seems he wants to put to bed some of the doubts that Alan has about the path he's on being created by the 14th and Cross. And Cross is like, no, we didn't put you on this path. A path is something that you create with your own feet as you're walking. It's the ground you tread, and everything behind you is your path. As such, the only person who can do that is you. And he tells Alan he needs to stop wearing the Mask of Mana. Now, we don't get an explanation of what that means, but it's clear Alan understands it. Because then we get 2 flashbacks, one of when Mana was being this friendly, happy-go-lucky guy to Alan, who is sad about Mana's dog being killed. And then another flashback of when Lena Lee and Johnny brought up that Alan is being less nice in the way he speaks, less formal, which heavily implies, well, it doesn't straight up say it, but it heavily implies the reason why Alan acts the way he does is because he's imitating Mana's way of acting, his speech, his mannerisms and such, and that the real Alan is someone that has been buried by who Alan is now. Alan and Link just discuss what was just said on the recording. He doesn't understand the part about the wearing the mask of Mana, but it's clear Link is beginning to like Alan a little more and more. Or at least the two are starting to become more comfortable with each other. On the inside of the building, that's where the inspector and all the police are at, who are currently surrounding and guarding a crown covered in jewels that the thief declared he was going to steal. The inspector is super hyped up by the simple fact that now that he's competing with the Exorcist to catch Phantom G, he wants to prove that him and the police can do this on their own and they're amazing. And he's getting all pumped up. That is when Phantom G jumps down in the center onto the case with the crown, smashes it, grabs it, and then gets away. Or at least he would have gotten away if it wasn't for the fact that he escaped out the wrong window, because he runs into Kanda, the worst of the Exorcists to get into a fight with, because Kanda does not show any mercy and just starts to beat the shit out of this man. He then starts to drag Phantom G away. That's when the inspector finally comes out with the police. He starts yelling at him, saying that that's his suspect. And Kanda's like, hey, I just want the guy. You can have the crown. He tosses the crown. Some cop catches it. A clear ping happens between Phantom G and the cop, which heavily indicates that Phantom G switched bodies. The cop runs off with the crown. That's when the guy in the suit starts to freak out, asking what's going on. Why is he wearing this weird outfit? And then another Phantom G appears on top of the building. He's then immediately kicked in the head by Alan, basically knocked out. This also causes the crown to almost fall off the building where Alan has to then catch it. Obviously, the guy that Alan just kicked in the head has been defeated, and so Phantom G has to switch bodies again. This time he switches to Link. And then Phantom G in Link's body starts to beat the shit out of Alan, and Alan's actually completely surprised. Because one, he always assumed that Link was more of the intellectual type, not the fighting type. And two, apparently when Phantom G possesses an individual, he basically is able to use their body perfectly like they were themselves. So any martial arts or whatever that Link knows, Phantom G is able to just do naturally, even if he doesn't know how to do any of those martial arts himself. Phantom G then demands that Alan hand over the crown, and Alan's response says, we can't do that because we didn't come for the crown, we came for you. Kanda finally catches up and attacks Link, but Phantom G activates one of Link's abilities, which is this talisman barrier technique that was supposed to crush Kanda, but fortunately for Kanda, since he knows what the Crow are, he was able to dodge it. Phantom G is actually getting super excited by the fact that he just took over a really strong body. On the other hand, the last guy who took over, the cop, was finally captured by the police. He, of course, is freaking out. The inspector's also wondering why one of his officers is dressed as Phantom G and tried to steal the crown. And all Phantom G and Link's body can do is just laugh about it. He seems to really enjoy getting other people in trouble for the bad things he does. Alan's disgusted by this because that's disgusting behavior to have. He's ruining other people's lives and he just thinks it's funny. This, of course, pisses off Phantom G being told that he's a terrible person, but it's clear Phantom G has actually never been in a real fight, and Alan and Kanda are just beating his ass. At a certain point, Alan takes out Crown's sword and stabs him through. Of course, it doesn't hurt humans, it only hurts evil things like Akuma and Noah's. But obviously Phantom G doesn't know that. He starts to freak out, starts to cry, calls Alan a murderer, and just continues to freak out until eventually he loses control over Link's body and completely separates, which is exactly what they wanted to happen because Mary was listening to the entire city and was able to track where Phantom G went. The next day, we go over to an orphanage where Amelia is at. She's currently looking for a boy named Timothy, the one that groped her a few days ago. And in the orphanage, we learn that it is about to close down because it doesn't have enough money. But it just received a pretty good donation from a anonymous individual. And so we learn that Phantom G is this boy Timothy who apparently steals whatever hell he feels like stealing and then sells on the black market so then he can then give the money to the orphanage that he lives at. Eventually, Amelia does in fact find him and tells him he needs to start studying. He says no, runs away, and she basically chases him across the entire orphanage until eventually they make it to the front door. Right before running outside to escape, he decides to grow up her breast again. She gets pissed about this and decides to kick him in the goddamn head, but as that's happening, Alan is opening the door, which then leads to Amelia kicking Timothy's head into Alan's head, giving both of them kind of a concussion, but at the same time activating Timothy's powers and causing him to take over the body of Alan. Now, everyone assumes that this kid just got knocked unconscious after running headfirst into Alan, and so they're all worried about him. They pick him up and they see he has a giant ball in the middle of his forehead. As for Alan's body, who's being controlled by Timothy, he just starts gushing blood from his forehead because, once again, that solid ball thing collided with Alan's head, so it's bleeding like crazy, and Timothy starts crying. Both Mary and Conda realize what's happening because they've heard him cry before, but Link, who was technically the one being possessed and crying at the time, doesn't realize that Alan's body has just been taken over and just thinks Alan's being a baby, which is actually kind of funny. But anyway, Timothy realizes he switched bodies. He starts freaking out, starts looking for his. But of course, Conda decided to take Timothy's body hostage and threatened him to, well, cut his head off. Conda, a dick to everyone, even kids. But I'm not gonna lie, Timothy kind of deserves it. We then jump ahead few minutes where both Timothy and Alan are tied up together. They're in their normal bodies, and Alan's confused why he was even tied up to begin with. And of course, they explain the whole situation about Timothy taking over other people's bodies and such to both the nun and to Amelia, who look at them like they're insane. Because of course, if someone told you that, you would consider them to be insane. We then get Timothy's backstory and the explanation of where he got his innocence. Of course, both the nun and Amelia have no idea what innocence is, or any of it, but they do explain how he got the ball in his head. So, Timothy's father was a thief, and one day, when the cops were finally coming for him, he decided to stash a valuable gem that he stole inside of his own son's stomach, though he forced Timothy to swallow it. After the inspector came after Timothy's dad, took him down, but the gem did not, of course, come out. Instead, it infused itself onto Timothy's forehead. Then there's a second nun there that basically glares at all of them, walks into a different room, makes a phone call, basically informing her master about all of the exorcists, the innocents, and the boy. Now, they're pretty sure that the ball in his head is innocence, and this boy Timothy is its user. They inform the ladies that they're going to take Timothy with him, and they're going to test out to see if this really is innocence. If it's not, then they'll just bring Timothy back. But if it isn't, he's coming with them to be an exorcist. Timothy freaks out about this. First off, he doesn't know what an exorcist is, but that doesn't matter. What he's angry about is that someone is deciding what his life is going to be other than him, because apparently his dad did that a lot. Which, yeah, if your dad forces you to swallow an entire gem, then yeah, I can understand why you don't like listening to people who just force you to do whatever you want. Timothy declares that he's going to stay here, and that he'd rather die than be taken away. Conda kind of complies with this and basically threatens to kill the kid. Of course, he starts to freak out and cry, jumps into the nun's arms, and of course Mary, the only sane person there, tries to basically shut Conda up and try to smooth everything over. And then before they can get any further in this conversation, the outside just turns black. And when they look out the window, the entire town is gone. What happened is that a barrier was placed over the entire orphanage, trapping all of them inside with Akumas, including a level 4, which, based on what happened last time, they're going to have serious trouble trying to beat this thing, especially if they have to protect an entire orphanage filled with women and children. And to make matters worse, Alan's eye isn't working. He didn't see any of these Akumas coming. And the reason why Alan's eye isn't working is because of these skulls. 4 skulls in particular put up this barrier using what I assume are golems in the shape of love bugs, which separates the entire orphanage off into its own dimension, at the same time blocking Alan's cursed eye. On the outside of the barrier, no one is able to see or hear or even get in. This is shown when a man delivering mail is constantly knocking on the door, but no one answers. On the other hand, Akumas can just walk right in. And so Alan and the others are forced to deal with 1 level 4, 1 level 3, and 2 level 2s. And the level 4 immediately just attacks the building where they're all located. Alan uses Crown to protect all the humans, and the battle with the level 4 begins. Alan, Conda, and Mary begin engaging with the level 4. Alan tells Link he's going to open up a gate with the Ark. Obviously, Link says, no, you can't do that. But Alan's like, we have to save all these kids, and obviously that's our job. But Link is very strict when it comes to following the rules. He isn't allowed to open a gate to the Ark unless he is given strict orders from headquarters. But Alan just doesn't care. He says, you know, I'm going to do this anyway. I'm ignoring Link. He tries to do it, doesn't work. So the barrier also cuts off access to the Ark. Realizing the situation they're in, Alan, Conda, and Mary decide that the best option is just to kill the Akumas and then just wait to be rescued, while Link takes all of the humans and gets them as far away from the fighting as possible. Unfortunately, on their way to the basement to take cover, the nun and all of the children, excluding Timothy, turn into puppets. Seeing this happen to the nun, we actually get to see a flashback when Timothy first joined the orphanage. He was very hateful of basically the world, which makes perfect sense after what his dad did to him and the fact that now he has a giant ball on his head. But Mother Superior is clearly a kind and caring woman, and she was really the one who got him out of his shell and showed him basically a parent's love. And now Timothy, in the present, has to watch as basically his mother figure is turned into a doll. Amelia, alongside Timothy and Link, also didn't get turned into a doll, is then shot twice, and it's revealed to be the other nun. Now, it heavily implied that this other nun was an Akuma in disguise this whole time, but in reality, she wasn't. She's a collaborator, a normal human who basically does the Earl's bidding in exchange for money, which is extremely short-sighted because the Earl's plan is to wipe out all of humanity, but whatever. She takes Timothy hostage as she continues to fire round after round at Link, but this doesn't really last very long because the obvious happens, which is the Akuma betray her. So we get revealed that it's one of the level 2's abilities to turn people into puppets, and all he has to do is just stare at you with his one eye for 6 seconds. Once that happens, you get turned into a doll. This is basically what happens to this sister, who is a traitor. She's like, hey, I'm on your side, what are you doing? And the Akuma's response is, well, if we're on the same side, then you can use your life to feed me. And he just stomps on her head and kills her. The level 2 then grabs Timothy, and Link jumps into action to save him, because he can't let the innocents be taken by the Akuma. He declares that even he can take on a level 2, but I find that kind of hard to imagine based on just how strong level 2s have shown themselves to be. But anyway, Link goes in, and then immediately is dogged by the level 3. And the other level 2 also pops up, and they all basically start laughing at Link, but Link declares that while he doesn't have black robes, he's not an exorcist, he does have black wings, because he's a crow, and he's actually able to weave his way around both the level 3 and the other level 2 to get to the Puppet Master. And he does this sealing technique, which starts to warp very reality, is apparently going to seal the Puppet Master away forever. Unfortunately, the Puppet Master was staring at Link for at least 6 seconds, and he begins to turn into a doll. So if Link just had a second longer, he actually would have beaten the Puppet Master, but he didn't. And now Timothy's surrounded by 3 Akumas. Alan sees what's happening, he rushes in to save Timothy and Link and the rest. Unfortunately, the level 4 mutates its arm into a Gatling gun and just rips apart Alan's body with bullets. He then starts firing it at both Kanda and Mary. They use their innocence to block all the bullets, but unfortunately for Mary, one of the bullets hits him in 2 of his fingers. Mary, being an equipment type, means that he doesn't have immunity to the poison and it's beginning to spread. And without hesitation, Mary just chops off 2 of his fingers. This one confused me for a second, but it just shows how fast the level 4 is. So Kanda then goes in to cut off the level 4's head, but in an instant, the level 4 gets behind Kanda and then riddles him with bullets. Now, he's an equipment type as well, so it should kill him, but he's also has this weird body that's able to, heal. So, obviously, it's not going to kill him. The Akumas are able to take Timothy hostage. They start beating up Link, who's half doll at this point, just for the fun of it, because, of course, Akumas are cruel. And as Timothy is crying and bawling his eyes out, Alan sends a communication to him through Tim Campy saying he's going to save him, don't worry. Obviously, Timothy has no reason to believe this. And so at this moment, Timothy's life begins to flash before his very eyes. He remembers when he first joined the orphanage, when he heard the orphanage was going to be shut down because it can't pay its bills, when he realized he had this ability to basically take other people's bodies, and then he decided to use it to steal. And then he begins to realize what Alan said to him before, which is that he's a terrible person because what he did was frame innocent people. And Timothy begins to realize and accept that, yeah, he has been a bad guy this whole time. He's been hurting innocent people, and he can't just use the excuse, well, I was trying to help the orphanage. What does that matter if you hurt innocent people? And at that moment, Timothy actually just gives up. He actually begins to believe that he isn't worth saving. That is, until Amelia comes up. She picks up the nun's gun and starts shooting at the Akumas, demanding that they let Timothy go. Unfortunately, bullets don't work on Akumas. They mock her first because Akumas have to be cruel, and then they decide they're just going to kill her. Level 3 lunges in, Timothy begs them to stop, he begs Amelia to run away, and right before the level 3 kills Amelia, the Puppet Master Akuma blocks the attack. So yes, Timothy finally used his innocence the way it was supposed to be used, to possess Akuma. He left his body and took over the body of the puppet master Akuma. Funny enough, his body that he left all alone and unsafe has this weird defensive mechanism whenever he leaves it, or at least it's a defensive mechanism against other Akuma, because it starts to radiate the power of innocence, and the level 2 that's currently holding him basically bursts into flames. As for the puppet master that Timothy took over, because the Akuma and his power is innocence, it actually begins to mutate and change shape until eventually the puppet master is no longer an Akuma. It's now a being made from innocence. Oh, and Timothy did this all on just pure instinct, because as soon as it's all over, the taking over the body, the transforming, he then goes, wait, I can do that? Both him and Amelia are both just as surprised. So yeah, this wasn't planned. This wasn't some idea he came up with. It was literally just, I need to save Amelia, and it just happens. As for that other level 2 that was burst into flames, those flames then slowly transform into a man that begins to talk to Timothy. Apparently, this is the innocence inside of Timothy. It's able to communicate. We've never seen this happen before with innocence, but my assumption is it's because Timothy's power is connected to his soul and being able to move it around, and so this innocence is able to project its soul. Unfortunately, it only can be seen and heard by Timothy himself. And so Timothy starts to have this conversation with his innocence. That is until the level 3 decides to kick him in the stomach. Both him and the level 2 that got burst into flames are now pissed. And basically the two of them plan on taking it out on Timothy. But even if they weren't pissed, this just confirms that Timothy's power is in fact innocence, and it's their job to destroy innocence. Both Timothy and Amelia then remember what Kanda said about how if his power really is innocence, then he's going to have to join the Black Order. He's going to have to leave the orphanage. And so both of them are now sad at the moment. If they survive this, they're going to have to be separated, and Timothy will have to take part in a war. And so after all of the grief and all of the pain and the acceptance of the fact that what he was doing this entire time was wrong, he finally stands up and decides, okay, I'm going to defeat these two Akumas. We then pop over to the prison where the three finders are currently giving a massage to that Bond guy, the tranny. They're somewhat worried because they think they might have been forgotten, but Alan assured them that he did send word to headquarters to come pick them up. But obviously when you've been locked in jail for as long as they have, they're obviously getting skittish. That's when the Bond guy said, I wish there was someone coming for me to get me out of here. And they're like, well, you have pretty large muscles. I think you're pretty fit. You could be a pretty good finder if you joined us. And he's like, no. I have no interest in fighting monsters. My goal is to find love. And at that moment, that's when River shows up, declaring that he's come to pick them up. He's finally got permission to free them. And the tranny dude just jumps at River, trying to kiss him. Fortunately, there's this giant wall of glass separating the two. Anyway, all the finders are super excited that River's there to get them. They're ready to go home, but he tells them, no, we're actually going to the orphanage because we suddenly lost contact with literally everyone, and we're going to need your help. So they're kind of sad about that. On the other hand, they just collected a new finder, the tranny dude, because he seems to be really into River, and I guess that seemed enough to recruit him into a war. There's also a couple of crows with River. Apparently, Central's decided to give every section chief bodyguards. Of course, River heavily implies that they are there to protect him, but also to monitor him. Back to the fight. Timothy's actually pretty good. He's beaten the hell out of the other level 2. Of course, it was heavily burned by his innocence already, so it's kind of weakened. But his innocence that has gained a consciousness, I'll just refer to him as Bigger Timmy. So Bigger Timmy then informs Timothy that every ability that the Akuma has, he now has because he took it over. So he should start using the abilities of that Akuma. And this is the puppet Akuma, so Timothy stares directly at the other level 2 that's currently standing up, and in 6 seconds, it then turns into a doll itself. And now that it's been turned into a doll and defenseless, Timothy just crushes its head. After defeating the other level 2, he then charges at the level 3. They collide punches, and Timothy is easily defeated because he's possessing a level 2, so he just gets overpowered. Big Timothy gets irritated because he was trying to warn him about that, but he just rushed in, says he don't screw it. He possesses Timothy's body, and then goes after his master. Alan tries to go help Timothy, but the level 4 has no interest in letting that happen. He orders the level 3 to take care of him, while he holds off the rest of the exorcists. So Big Timmy is then able to get over to Timothy, explain to him the leveling system of Akuma and how his level 2 has no chance of winning. Timothy goes, why didn't you say that earlier? He's like, I was trying to. Now listen to me. And then Timothy says, okay, fine, I'll take over the bigger one. He leaves the level 2, rushes over to level 3. His soul bounces off the level 3 because he's not strong enough to take over level 3 just yet. Big Timmy then tries to explain that to him. He says, why didn't you tell me? He says, I was literally about to tell you. You need to listen to me. He goes, fine, I'll go back into the level 2 then. And then he watches the level 2 crumble to dust, because as soon as he possesses the Akuma, that Akuma then becomes innocence, and therefore it kills itself. And the only reason why it stays together is because Timothy's inside of it. So as soon as he leaves it, it dies. Once again, Timothy gets mad. Why didn't Big Timmy explain this to him? And he's like, I tried to, you're just not listening to me. Which then forces Timothy to then rush into his own body, but at that moment the level 3 is on top of him, and he's about to be killed. Fortunately, because the level 2 died, the puppet master, all the people he turned into puppets, depuppified. And so a depuppified Link was then able to save Timothy. On the outside, while all that is happening, River, the rest of the team, and the inspector show up to the orphanage. The inspector informs River that Thief G does not live here because he knows everyone in the orphanage and he knows none of them would be a thief. And then him and River then get into an argument about the existence of innocence and such. Well, it's not really an argument on River's part because he understands how ridiculous everything he's saying is. He's just trying to calmly explain to the inspector that yes, all of this does exist. The two crows then realize there's something wrong with the building. The science team check it out and they quickly figure out that there's a barrier. The skulls that are watching this from a distance are basically mocking the scientists because no one can enter that building except for Akuma, so it's a lost cause for the science team to get in. That's when the two crows just walk through the door. Just pass right past the barrier, which freaks out everyone, including the skulls. Back inside, unfortunately, this is a level 3, and also Link is still partially a puppet, and so his body's breaking apart on the impact of the level 3's attacks. And for the first time, Timothy actually does what he's supposed to do, and first asked Big Timmy, will this work? Can he possess Link and then fuse his innocence into Link to increase the power of his attacks to kill this level 3? And Big Timmy says, no, that only works on Akuma. The level 4 then does that high-pitched scream the other one did back at the Order that causes short-term paralyzation to anyone who hears it. Link collapses, the barrier disappears, and the level 3 goes in to kill him. That's when one of the crows then blocks the attack of the level 3 with just his arm. Based on his strength, the level 3 assumes he's an exorcist, but then realizes he has no innocence. And then the crow says, evoke. His arm turns into this weird thing with a hole in the center, and he just absorbs the level 3. His name is Madoro, and even Link was surprised by this because he's also a crow, but he has no idea what just happened. As for the fight with the level 4, now that Alan no longer has to worry about trying to save Timothy and being stopped by the level 4, he can focus on killing it instead. When Alan and Candace actually focus up, their teamwork is quite impressive. They're able to overpower the level 4 and even chop off a couple of his limbs pretty quickly. But that's not to say the level 4 is weak. No, it is still a level 4. It actually grabs onto Alan's sword with its teeth, is able to force Alan to let go of it and throws it away, and then just rips apart Alan with gunfire. Once again, he's immune because he's a paramecia type, but there's still bullets, which is still causing a lot of damage. Of course, here's something that the level 4 did not see coming, was the fact that Alan can control his sword telekinetically. It slowly turns towards the level 4 wall, its back is turned to it, and it just rockets straight through him. The momentum of this sword rocketing through the level 4 was so fast that it actually stabbed through Alan as well, and pinned them both to the wall. The Akuma then starts to laugh, saying that he just killed himself. But Alan's like, my sword does not kill people. It only kills evil things, like Akuma or Noah. And then Alan begins to convulse in pain. His veins begin to pulsate, and he's just covered in absolute agony. Everyone is completely stunned because Crown Clown should not be hurting Alan, but it is. The level 4 then starts to laugh at Alan, opens its mouth, another gun pops out, and right before he shoots Alan straight in the head and killing him, Alan stops screaming in pain, puts his hand on the Akuma's cheek, and says, good morning. And what you see, in place of Alan, is the image of the devil. The 14th has finally revealed itself. The sudden surprise of seeing a Noah causes the level 4 to stop its attack, giving Kanda time to just stab it through its mouth, the blade barely missing Alan's head. It's clear Kanda can tell that's not Alan anymore, and he screams, hey, bean sprout, which then allows Alan to snap back and forcing the 14th back out, and both him and Kanda with their swords just rip apart the level 4. Now back in control, the first thing Alan says is, my name is Alan. Some time pass, and they're also stuck in the barrier, unable to escape, because it can only be deactivated from the outside. Fortunately, the science team slowly finds all of the ladybugs and start to destroy them. As you can imagine, the inspector, who doesn't believe any of this, is just getting annoyed by the fact that they just don't walk through the door, because, it's a door. So he walks up to it and says, here, I'll show you. And the exact moment that all the finders destroy the ladybugs, destroying the barrier, he opens the door. The building, which was in the middle of a fight, then reverts to its destroyed state, causing everyone to basically fall because there are a bunch of holes everywhere. And the inspector opens the door to Alan and the rest, who are just covered in blood, and he's like, what? As all this is happening, Mother Superior wakes up. As you can imagine, Timothy starts to cry in joy because basically his mother figure is alive. The kids then start crying in pain. Timothy, after hugging Mother Superior, also feels that she's also burning because the dark matter effects are still on them and they have to be treated back at the Black Order. But once they get proper medical care back at the Order, they'll all recover perfectly and they'll be able to go about their lives again. Finally, after seeing all of this, the inspector believes everything that's happening. The Akuma Earl innocence, Timothy being the thief, all of it, he believes it now. You can't really deny all the evidence, especially when your daughter was a part of it. And so the inspector then reveals a lot of information to Alan and the others that he doesn't say it outright, but he basically says in the raid to take down Timothy's father, he ended up shooting him dead. And the reason why he brought Timothy to the orphanage instead of taking him in himself was the guilt that he felt because he orphaned this child. But now he's decided he wants to take responsibility of Timothy and protect him from the Earl and such. And literally everyone, including his daughter, is like, that's not happening. He's an ordinary man. He has no way of protecting Timothy from what's out there and what's coming for him. Timothy, as I said earlier in this video, has basically come to the same conclusion and has decided he will join the Black Order as an exorcist. In exchange. And what are these demands? Well, we get to see them through the sad and broken face of Kamui, where he reads that he now has to pay for all the damages caused by Phantom G, which are literally all the priceless things that he stole and sold on the black market. He also has to pay restitution to all of the innocent people that Phantom G put in prison. And finally, the Order has to make sure the orphanage is financially stable for the rest of his existence. It is a number so massive it caused Kamui to change art styles. Emilia and her father Inspector are both at the Black Order. They decided to treat her gunshot wounds even though she wasn't affected by dark matter, so that was nice of the Order. And she makes the decision that she's going to actually join the Black Order. She feels it's wrong for Timothy to be doing this all by himself, and so she wants to be his support. This, of course, causes her father to basically fall over. Timothy then has basically his last moments with Mother Superior before she goes back to the orphanage with all the kids. He basically shows off his new uniform, the fact that he gets to eat whatever he wants, and he's just living a high life now. He's moving up in the world. She's super proud of him, and eventually, obviously, the two begin to break down because they're like mother and son, and they're gonna have to be separated now. Alan's watching this moment between the two of them with Link, and he mentions that Mother Superior is a lot like Mana, and he was a lot like Timothy when he was his age. And he's actually just reminiscing about this happy moment. And Link is like, have you ever actually talked about Mana with anyone else? And Alan's like, no, I haven't. But then he realizes he was remembering a happy memory and he was able to smile thinking about Mana. And so Alan's actually quite grateful that he can still feel love for this man that raised him. And the chapter ends off with Alan being quite content for the first time in a long time. At the same time, we get to see the massive scar his sword left on his body. A very sad and very contradicting image. Alright, if you enjoyed this video, please subscribe, give a thumbs up so you enjoy more D. Gray Man and other anime things. Thank you and have a great day.